Good evening. I call to order this meeting of the Wendell Town Board and welcome everyone. I'm surprised to see so many people here on a cold, rainy night, but we're happy to have you here. Tonight, Kai Scarborough of East Wake High School is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you want to make your way over to the podium, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Kai is a senior at East Wake High School. She'll be graduating in June and attending Hampton University in the fall. Kai was recently awarded the Youth of the Year Award for the district and is continuing through the process for Top Senior Scholarship Award for Wake County. Kai is truly an academic student. She has taken many honors level courses while in high school and also challenged herself by enrolling in advanced placement courses. She's organized and has a tremendous work ethic. These skills have aided in her success within these rigorous courses. She's always been very engaged and conscientious in her course selections. Her intellect is very impressive. Kai loves the challenge and is highly driven to succeed. She's curious and enjoys learning. Kai is a very well-rounded young lady. In addition to her success in the classroom, she has participated in the following clubs: National Honor Society, National Spanish Honor Society, Beta Club, and she served in a leadership role as student body president during her junior year of high school. And I believe you're a senior now. Yes, right. While maintaining an exemplary grade point average and participating in extracurricular activities, Kai also works part-time and volunteers for time working with children in the community. We're very proud to have you here tonight and have you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And congratulations for being selected by your principal for this.
Thank you.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Don Mallard's here tonight to do our invocation from Covenant Presbyterian Church. Good evening, and thank you for being here with us. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and distinguished members of the Council of the Board of Commissioners. Before we do the invocation, I'm proud to announce that Covenant Choir is one of the 7 local churches that will be performing in a special musical program. It's called Come to the Cross and Remember by Pepper Choplin. It will be at Mandy Hall on Sunday, April the 2nd at 7 p.m. Tickets are $10 a piece, which is quite reasonable for this kind of a program. Tickets are available at the Covenant Presbyterian Church office. And I'd also like to say that I'm proud that the Covenant Choir Director, Wanda Ram, is a personal friend of Pepper Choplin, and he will be directing the program that evening. So it'll be quite exciting to see, I believe.
Well, congratulations to them.
Yes. Let's bow together. Almighty God, whose blessings are numberless and whose power is infinite, we are grateful for the rich heritage that is ours in this nation of free people. We give you thanks for your manifold gifts to us as we meet for God and country to carry on the business and work of the town of Wendell, North Carolina. May we be honest and open in all our dealings as we seek to serve you in this community. May the programs we undertake and support inspire a love of this nation, a desire that we continue a strong and resourceful people, and a deep respect for those who protect the freedom we enjoy. Amen.
Thank you. Do I have any adjustments to the agenda or motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right. No one signed up for public comment tonight. So a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right. Item number 4 is the recognition of East Wake High School teacher Jeremy Hodges. Mr. Hodges, if you'll come right up here. Jeremy Hodges is a first-year teacher at East Wake High School and serves as world history teacher. He consistently demonstrates a commitment to his students, the school, and a commitment to the entire Eastern Wake community. He has a unique ability to engage and motivate students. Mr. Hodges is like E.F. Hutton. When he speaks, everyone listens. Wow, that's very impressive. When you are in this classroom, you can tell that students are hanging on every word. Mr. Hodges uses a variety of instructional strategies to engage his students, and he always includes real-life and relevant experiences that make learning meaningful. Overall, his lessons captivate his students, and his classroom is a dynamic and positive learning environment. Mr. Hodges is not only an awesome teacher, he is a true leader. He serves on the school improvement team and the Bring Your Own Device committee. He has been the spark that ignited spirit of collaboration within the staff and is a great influencer within our entire school. Mr. Hodges is the ideal teacher that every principal would love to have on his staff. This is really high praise. Mr. Austin wrote this himself. Mr. Hodges is well respected by the students, parents, and staff. He is a hardworking individual who goes above and beyond to help our students. Mr. Hodges has a vision for learning. He is sensitive to the needs of all of his students and is a team player and knows how to motivate students and colleagues. Jeremy Hodges represented East Wake High School as its nominee for the Diane Kent Parker First Year Teacher of the Year Award. In February, Mr. Hodges was named one of 4 finalists for the Diane Kent Parker First Year Teacher Award in Wake County Public School System. We are proud to have Mr. Hodges at East Wake High School. I just want to congratulate you on that. That's very high praise. And thank you for being at East Wake High School, and thank you for everything you do for our kids and our community. Is there anything you'd like to
I just want to say thank you so much for having me tonight. I'd like to thank Mr. Alston for hiring me, giving me a chance right out of school. It's a big deal. I want to thank you guys for sending your children to East Wake High School. You don't have to send them there. We understand that. And it is our privilege and our honor to teach them at East Wake High School. And finally, I want to thank my fiance, Rachel Snyder, who supports me every day in a not necessarily easiest profession in the world. So, thank you.
Thank you for all that you do. Thank you. Item 5A is a presentation by the City of Raleigh requesting the support of the City of Raleigh Falls Lake Reallocation Water Supply Plan. Mr. Waldrop, how are you this evening?
I'm well. Thank you
Good.
for your invitation, Mayor.
You're very welcome.
Bear with me as Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you again for your invitation and your patience as I get set up.
That's quite all right.
We'll try to move through this presentation very quickly, just in case there's questions. I'd like to begin by, again, thanking our friends in Wendell for being such good partners with us as we walk this road together. We're going to talk a little bit today about our new water resource development, and we've had some conversations in the past. So we'll briefly run through the background. We'll talk about the authorities that the United States Army Corps of Engineers are using to consider our request, their preliminary findings, and where we can go from here. Just a reminder, and I probably don't need to remind this board, having visited us recently, that we are a collective. We serve 7 communities, 550,000 people. And among other things, we're collectively looking for new water resources to continue sustainable growth into the foreseeable future. And we've been walking this path quite a while, at least since 2006. And actually, we've been looking at new water resources in eastern Wake County since '71. Why do we need new water resources? Because we're growing communities. And we project a need of additional water supply to continue that growth, even though our customers, like many customers across the nation, are becoming wiser with the use of their water. Our current needs, as we project them today for the next 30 years, from 2015 to 2045, is about 22 to 23 million gallons a day in additional water supply to meet a population growth of almost 1 million people, or a little over 1 million people. So, we've looked at multiple water resource options, and in 2014, we decided to look very closely at our primary water supply, Falls Lake, which is a multiple-purpose reservoir. We asked the United States Army Corps of Engineers, who manages the project, to consider reallocation of storage within that reservoir. And they can do so under congressional authorizations that have existed since 1958. What we asked them to do is to consider a reallocation of storage in the reservoir from water that is currently reserved for downstream use to our collective communities, with the promise that we would use that water and then responsibly return it to the river for use in the downstream communities. We have identified this as the most cost-effective and least environmentally damaging practical alternative to develop a new water resource. So the Corps began the process on our behalf in 2015. They have a very robust planning process called the Smart Feasibility Study process. They promise a reasonable answer in 3 years for less than $3 million involving all 3 levels of the Corps. Their 3-3-3 process. And just a reminder that this is our primary water supply, with about 80% of our water coming from Falls Lake. The timeline up to now is the city, on behalf of our merger communities and our Raleigh citizens, made a request in 2013. We worked through a formal notification process. We, collectively, are paying for the entire study. So that enabled the Corps to move forward in a more timely manner. And as of January 25th, 2017, the Corps identified a reallocation as the tentatively selected plan. That was very good news for us. That was a notice that we received from Washington, that in their opinion, this does appear to be the most logical way to proceed for our region. So, just a reminder, we're removing water from Falls Lake that's currently going to be reserved for downstream use. We collectively use it, and except for a very small percentage which is discharged in Zebulon, the vast majority of it would be returned to the Neuse River upstream of the gauge that's used to control releases from Falls Lake. So it's a reuse of a resource. This is a very difficult graphic. I apologize for how busy it is, but it's a graphical representation of how we would move water from one dedicated use to the next. Again, with the promise that we will return 85% of all water that's utilized. And of course, the Corps has to do its due diligence and evaluate the environmental impacts and the flow impacts to this request. And the Corps has found that there are minimal impacts to the environment and to the proposed uses of the lake, the existing uses. Thus, its selection of this plan. So what our ask is? Our ask is, with your support, we would like to let the Corps know how important this is to our collective communities. The Corps has authorized a public comment period beginning on March 17th and lasting for 30 days to take in everybody's opinion on this proposed project. And if they agree that this proposed project continues to be the best alternative for all of us, as soon as November 17th, we could have a closing on a contract to provide an additional generation's worth of water, 30 years. So how can you help? We ask that you let the Corps know that this project is important to the Wake County and to the Triangle region as a whole. We suggest, if you can, to thank the Corps for their project support and to let the new administration in Raleigh know how important this is. And then if you have the opportunity to let your congressional delegation know that this is important to our region. And so we have worked with your staff to bring forward a potential resolution, but any level of support would be most welcome. Questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Waldrop?
Is there any cost to our taxpayers for what you're planning on doing, or?
If we're successful for this additional amount of water, there will be a cost, approximate, what we have estimated right now is about $23 million, plus there'll be some upgrade costs associated to the water treatment plant itself that will be absorbed by all ratepayers. Now, to put that in perspective, the Little River Reservoir project was, or is, around a $300 million project. So it's an order of magnitude more cost effective.
Any other questions? So what's y'all's pleasure? What do you want to do?
I'll make a motion that the town of Wendell puts our support to the City of Raleigh Falls Lake Reallocation Water Supply Plan.
You want to adopt the resolution?
Please.
All right, it's a motion to adopt the resolution, support the City of Raleigh Falls Lake Reallocation Water Supply Plan. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Item 5B is presentation and update of the City of Raleigh Bill Assistance Program.
Okay, Mayor Gray, thank you for having me as well.
You're welcome.
Also wanted to offer my congratulations to Mr. Hodges for that recognition. My wife is a school teacher, so I know what the fiance has to deal with on a regular basis, so thank you to you both. And the E.F. Hutton comment was good. I hadn't heard that in a long time.
I like that too.
But what I wanted to tell you guys about today was our utility customer assistance program. It's one that we've had in place since November 1st, and I did come here several months ago to kind of give you a little bit of a overview of what we had in mind. Now we have something concrete to show you. So with that, I'll give you a little bit of background and then move on into the program mechanics and how it's worked so far. So we had a series of rate increases from the fiscal year 2010 through 2015 that resulted in some of the members of our community asking for some sort of relief from the increasing rates. And it became more of also a national issue as well. So we began to do a little investigation on our own. And one of the things that we pointed to first is how often people are being disconnected. Disconnections are obviously a significant issue. If you have no water service in the house, it is not tenable. You can't live there very long. And then there's the whole issue of disconnection, coming back out to reconnect and managing all those issues. So we looked at this, and what you're seeing there is 4 disconnections in 2 years. So really the point of this heat map is to show that this issue is spread throughout our service area, not concentrated only in one area and only a handful of communities. It's everywhere. And so that led us to some additional ideas about how we need to evaluate the need. And the classic need metric that most people look at is an EPA criteria that says if your annual water and sewer bills are in excess of 4.5% of the median household income, or excuse me, the household income, then there's a need. There's a chronic need there. And so using that metric, we were able to get some fairly specific income data from the census tracts, because if you look just at median household income of all of our merger communities, there theoretically would be no need. But median, I think everybody knows, isn't representative of the entire income spectrum, so we were able to drill down and get a little better data. And what that pie chart is showing you is that roughly 10% of our customers would qualify for needing some sort of assistance for their water and sewer utility bill. So that's 20,000 households. So that was certainly a sobering statistic for all of us. And more specifically, this is how that breakdown of the EPA criteria would look throughout our service area. And in general, it's a roughly equal percentage, around 1, but certainly some places have more need than others. And to use Wendell's example, because their bill is a little bit higher than the average utility bill, let's say Raleigh, at $82.90, there would be 52 customers, 52 households that would need assistance under the EPA criteria. So again, that was just more evidence that we wanted to develop a program, and we approached our city council to move forward with that, and we were able to do that. But the tricky part of this was that we were not able to use enterprise funds, that is, funds from the utility itself. There is general statute that prevents that from happening with a public utility, so that led us to figuring out which kind of other funding models there were out there. In general, you have a charitable system that can be roundup type programs, that can be just a write-in type donation, and then you have ones that are funded through a general fund. And what we've seen from our neighbors is that the donation systems generally are going to have pretty poor participation rates or pretty low participation rates and not generate a whole lot of revenue, and tend to be seasonal and kind of a uneven revenue stream. So some of the more effective models that we saw were ones that were from the general fund, and so we were able to work with our folks in the general fund to start the program. And when we did that, we recognized, obviously, we're not just Raleigh, we're 6 other important communities in Wake County, and our Raleigh General Fund provided $200,000, and so we decided, how could we offer up a similar ratio to our merger communities? And what we simply did was base it on the number of active residential accounts. There's probably other ways to do this, but this was seemingly a pretty straightforward and reasonable way to do it. And what you're seeing there is just how much it would be for each community based on the number of active accounts, using Raleigh's $200,000 as the benchmark. So, Raleigh obviously would have the lion's share of that, but the other communities were based off that $200,000. And to date, Garner has elected to participate. Theirs just started recently, and they're the only community so far that has participated. So a little summary slide here of the program and how it works and what's happened so far. We decided to base it on a program you may be familiar with. The acronym is LEAP. It's the Light Energy Assistance Program. It is a federally funded program. And I should note that there are no federally funded assistance programs for utility bills. There's obviously lots of programs for housing and food assistance and obviously light and energy, but water and sewer utility bills are left out. So having said that, we worked with our friends in Wake County and the Human Services group they have, and we wanted to use them as our screening resource, which they opted to do. And in order to make the work as easy as we could for them, we said, let's go ahead and use an existing criteria. And so it is an income-based criteria that is established through the LEAP program. So hopefully, typically if you have someone that's qualifying for LEAP, they would qualify for our program as well. So we've used their resource, and they've been great partners in that regard. Usually the way it's going to work is someone calls in, they may be having a hard time paying their bill. We do have payment plans, but again, we're talking about someone qualifying for LEAP. It's probably a chronic need. So the program is available to those customers in Raleigh and Garner right now. And typically the way it works is they'll call in and work with one of our customer service staff people, and they will recommend them to Wake County and refer them to the Wake County Human Services group. And then they will do the mean testing. They get back to us, usually in a matter of days. So it's a fairly quick process. We were concerned originally it would take a little while, but it actually happens pretty quickly. So we were excited about that. And as evidence of that, since the program has been in effect for Raleigh customers on November 1st, we've already helped over 300 people. So it's been moving quickly, and we expect that we will use all of our funding this fiscal year, probably well before the end of the fiscal year. So, you know, that's the summary of our program right now. And again, Garner has just become eligible as well, and that's our update. So I'll answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, sir.
You identified 52 residents in Wendell that might possibly have used that. Is that based on the average amount of the bill, or is that based on diving a little deeper into the data on a household-by-household basis?
It's a good question. So that number the 52 number, was based on the number of active residential accounts and the average bill. So the average bill, if you use 5 CCFs, I should have given you a little more information on that, is $82.90. So that can vary. I mean, you could have somebody that's using less than that or more than that, but we've seen over the 190,000 accounts that we have, 5 CCFs is the average user. So that was sort of the metric that we used. If you make that assumption and make that your benchmark, then 52 people in Wendell would qualify using the EPA criteria. Using the LEAP criteria, it would be a little bit different, but it would be a similar number.
But it's not based on an account-by-account
No, sir.
basis. Yours is just a generalization.
Yes, sir.
Because I know our bill, at my house at least, and I do have a small family, but we're generally between 1 and 2, 100 cubic feet per month. So, or CCF, whatever you want to call them. And so 5, I was wondering if that number is pushed up a little bit. Are there some account users who are using, a lot of water that are pushing these numbers up?
Those are.
I realize it's an average, and I realize a lot of people use a lot more water than I might, but.
And I'll first say that it's been going down. It used to be higher than that, and it's made us have to make some adjustments on our budget. Again, that's just a gross average of our residential accounts.
Not commercial.
Not commercial, correct. I use 5 CCF at my house, but wash a lot of clothes.
I was going to add that your neighbor in Zebulon, I use between 4 and 5 regularly. My bill is $97 just water and sewer, about $132 or $130 a month with all of the services on.
And I think we point that out is because those rates and Kenny's rates as well are higher than what you would see in Raleigh, for instance. And so that affects how many people would qualify, because those rates are a little bit higher. But again, that is a system-wide gross average, not Wendell specific.
So the reason we come out of the general fund is state law prohibits us from using utility revenues to pay utility bills?
Yes, and basically we can charge different rates for, let's say, residential and commercial, which we do. We have a tiered rate for residential in Raleigh and a uniform rate for commercial and institutional industrial customers. There is legislative room to do that, but within those classes, whether it's a residential class or a commercial class, you can't charge a different rate. So if all residential customers have to be treated equally.
And the other reason we use the general fund, well, you said it's more constant as far as revenue streams.
Yes, sir.
And that's, and I'll just say, and I appreciate Mr. Waldrop. We talked about this a while back, and I will so under the current program, we pay, or not us, obviously, but Raleigh or Garner, person calls in and they get assistance with their bill. Do they get wraparound services in any other way? Are they getting social services contacts? Are they getting weatherization contacts? Are we out there talking about conservation?
All good questions. So I'll first start off with something I should have mentioned originally in my presentation with Garner and Raleigh specifically. Those funds stay specifically in those communities.
Right.
So they're not mixed. I wanted to make that clear. As for the other issues you brought up, right now we have scripts and talking points for our customer care folks, and we have lists of other social assistance programs that we provide them. And of course, when they go to Wake County Human Services, they're going to be exposed to a lot of other assistance programs there. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to use Wake County, because, again, when you have that type of need, there's usually other needs as well. You know, there's food security issues and other things that are going on. And so typically what will happen is if they go there sometimes for other programs, they may find out about our program or vice versa. So that's how they're exposed to those as well.
I would echo my comments. One, LEAP is low income, not
Oh,
light. It's
I'm
low
sorry.
income,
Thank you.
Energy assistance program. And it's a great program. It's been around for years with good intention. In the town of Wendell, I would never support a program that doesn't give us complete wraparound. And I appreciate that you guys have come back and isolated those communities. I think that's a good step in the right direction. And I appreciate the referring people to Wake County so they'll be exposed to those other things. But I think this may be an area where, particularly in Wendell, if we do this, we look at trying to find someone that's already doing it, and we assist them in what they're already doing, because there's a lot of groups out there that are already doing it, obviously.
We bring this update to you just so that you have another tool in your toolbox to address this stressor that's existing in all of our communities, our continued rate increases. And it's magnified by the fact that our merger windows have not closed yet. So in eastern Wake County especially, there's a magnification effect. There's certainly other tools that we are working on with your staff. We continuously look at your merger models for improvements. We've made changes in some of our policies to make it easier for people to acquire not necessarily bill assistance, but a payment plan. And of course, we have the scripts that Mr. Berkman was talking about, trying to connect people to other sources of aid. Those are all tools in the toolbox. We would hope that if you see this as a need and you have the ability, that you would consider in your upcoming deliberations maybe adding this to the toolbox.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 6A is a public hearing on a proposed text amendment to Chapter 12 of the UDO as it relates to temporary signs. Mr. Bergmark.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This is a continuation of an item that's come to your attention before, dealing with temporary signs. To give a brief backstory, we've gone through periods where we allowed temporary signs for 10 days, four permits in a year. We've gone through periods where we suspended all temporary sign enforcement for a little over a year. And what we're now looking at doing is trying to create something that allows a little more flexibility than maybe the initial rules did, but that still keep temporary signs temporary so they don't just linger indefinitely. So again, we're asking you to hold the public hearing tonight and consider the proposed amendments you have in your packet. If the board votes to approve changes, I did want to point out that a supermajority 4-5 vote would be required due to the planning board's vote. So to get into what we're actually really looking at here, you have a proposal that that looks to expand both the duration and number of permits in a sense. So you have a summary of proposed changes included within your report. So going over those, what we're looking to do is to make temporary ground signs valid for 21 days rather than 10, with 6 signs permitted at a time. This is an increase in the number of days for the small ground signs, a slight decrease for banners. They were at 30 days, but there was a desire to create just a consistent time period to make it less confusing to everyone. We're also looking to remove content-related language from the banner section, which would still be valid for 21 days. Add feather flags as a temporary sign category, again, valid for 21 days, up to 12 feet tall. And those could be 2 to 4, depending on the amount of frontage that the business had. And then to amend the sandwich board sign language and remove the mobile sign category. Remove the language related to special event signs to just kind of let that fall under the catch-all category that we already have. And then finally add language under the applicability section to deal with fence wrapping, because that's something that's addressed in general statute, but we don't otherwise address. So you have a copy of the language changes, both redlined and kind of the complete version. The planning board, as I mentioned, they made two motions when they had this brought before them. At that time, it was actually a proposal that was valid, had temporary signs valid for 14 days rather than the 21. That's something we changed after we got an update from you all. But in there, when they reviewed the text amendment, they were fine with everything that wasn't related to temporary signs specifically, like the fence wrapping. Everything that was outside of 12.7D, they voted to approve. For 12.7D, they actually voted against that motion, or against that proposal, and instead suggested or recommended going through another period of suspended enforcement. So that's the reason why, if the board chooses to take action tonight, in addition to it being the first reading, that it would require a supermajority vote. I could go through it in more detail if you'd like, but otherwise I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Questions?
Just have a few questions.
Yeah, go
Real
ahead.
quick. David, currently, there are no ordinances or no rules addressing any of these bulleted points you have here, correct? Or are there are still some, are they just not being enforced?
So we have some, are you talking about the summary of proposed changes?
Yeah, so I'm just looking at, like, I know the small ground signs, we had kind of, for right now, had to kind of waive any kind of rules on that, hadn't we?
No, we do have still rules. Right now, what it is, though, is there's not really a time limit. They can just go on, once you pull a permit, they can go on for indefinitely, as long as, an in-town business, they can have up to 12 signs, and there's no duration on it. So what we're looking to do is try to reestablish a duration. We don't have anything that addresses the feather flag signs right now. The only thing it could fall under is just kind of a general catch-all, but that would only allow one feather flag sign. Okay. So it's kind of a mix. Some things that are new that aren't addressed, and other things that we're looking to change and to get a standard that we're comfortable with that we can strongly enforce.
And then what about the sandwich board notion?
Sandwich board signs, we've let that go a little bit, in that the way it's written right now, it's really supposed to be located within 8 feet of the business's door. There definitely have been some sandwich board signs out there that are not 8 feet from the front of the business. What we're looking to do is to try to instead make it so that it doesn't have to be within 8 feet of the door, but it just simply has to be in front of the business that it relates to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions, Mr. Bergmark?
So, it's going to be 12.9, item 5, subsection B. Such signs shall be properly maintained and kept in the upright position, or may be subject to the removal by town. That's something that we have in each of these?
Yes, well, that language is also just included in the general language for temporary signs requiring a permit under 12.7D, and just kind of that header. So any kind of, if you go look at 12.7D in the last sentence, that language is also there. All temporary signs shall be properly maintained and kept in upright position, or may be subject to removal by the town.
The only other thing I'll go back to is some staff notes, where it says staff recommends. I'm gonna take you out of context here. The proposed changes to simplify. There's a bunch of other words, and accommodate more temporary signage than previously allowed, while still maintaining a defined permit. So I think if we're trying to simplify things and we're trying to keep things straight, if we use the language at the bottom that says that the sign is not in compliance, so if it's in the right of way, it's not in compliance. If it's tipped over, it's not in compliance. There's a lot of things that I think probably started this that weren't in compliance to begin with. And I think that the more complex we get, I've read this thing 4 times, it's complex. The more complex we get, the harder we make it. I would move, Madam Mayor, that we adopt the planning board's recommendations, which would be to suspend or continue our current status on temporary signs, as well as making those changes that staff requested.
Can you hold that till after we have our public hearing?
Sure.
Are there any other questions, though?
I have a quick question.
Comments, okay.
Mr. Bergmark, may be subject to removal by the town. So that's what it says, but in practice, if we find a sign that's in disrepair, knocked over in the right-of-way, is it immediately removed? Or do we try and contact someone to have them correct their temporary sign? What happens in practice?
I think it may depend on the sign. If it was, a chamber sign advertising some event that's being held for the general public down, then we may not just pull it immediately. We might see if we can't call them and get them to fix it. But in general, I think that we would just remove the sign, especially if it's a business that's not even in town, or a business didn't pull a permit or something along those lines.
Don't you think up until this time, though, we really haven't been having any enforcement? I mean, I know that's not your responsibility, but these little small signs are all over in the right-of-way, cockeyed, one piece of metal out of the ground, pushed over. I see them all the time, and I think what we're all trying to get to is, if we were getting them out of the right-of-way, getting them out of the places that they're not supposed to be, having, the business owners to keep them in a state of repair, just like we do all other signs, that would probably take care of 90% of the messy complaints and comments we've been getting. At least that's my opinion.
I think it would take care of a lot. I think part of what that comes from, too, is just we've changed the rules so much. We've gone through periods where we really didn't have rules, that business owners really have no sense of what the rules are.
I agree with that.
There's a certain level of speculation over the level of support we'll get. So I think part of this is just to everyone be on the same page, have rules that we're all comfortable with, and know that we can, safely enforce it. And although some people may not like it, that we'll all be okay with that.
Any other comments, questions?
How many, if any, other municipalities in the county just disallow temporary signs at all? Are there any municipalities that just don't allow temporary roadside signs? I mean, other than political, and I realize there's some issues there with free speech, this and that, but as far as advertising off of your own property?
I don't know if any totally disallow. There might be some that totally disallow them in certain districts, or that have stricter standards, or that might totally disallow certain types. Like there's some that don't allow those feather flags, period, at all, anywhere. I don't know that there's any that don't allow any type of temporary sign on any basis. But we would definitely be more lenient with this than pretty much anybody else I know in the county.
My next question is, is anyone else lenient? Okay.
Okay. Any more questions? All right. Public hearing is now open. If anyone wishes to speak for or against, or have any comments about the signs, this is your chance. Step on up here. Tell us your name and address.
Paul White, Main Street. Quick question. Y'all started all this a year ago, trying to promote businesses, trying to get people to come in. I don't see it's the problem you see, but I have a question. If you don't put them in the right-of-way, where would you put them? The right-of-way extends behind the sidewalks, and most of these signs that I see, we did it because y'all came up with it. But if you don't have them in the right-of-way, you might as well do away with it, because where are you going to put them? You're not going to put them on people's property. So just a comment for what it's worth.
Anyone else?
I'm Ray Hennett. I live at 205 Dogwood Trail in Wendell. I'm not a business owner. I'm just a homeowner. And from a homeowner's perspective, we have way too many temporary signs in Wendell. To use a very technical term, they're tacky. And I think we should be more restrictive in the use of these signs. I think they ought to be super regulated, and I think they should have to get a permit. I would suggest you can use your 21 days, and they have to get a permit, say in January. It doesn't matter when they get it in January. January 31st, it expires. They take the sign up, it goes up for 30 days, and then March 1st, they apply again for 21 days. March 31st, it expires. All signs come up. We just have way too many temporary signs, and I'm not talking about real estate signs. I think that's a separate category. But for all these other signs, I think we need to be very restrictive. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Public hearing is now closed.
So,
Restate your motion.
well, I'm gonna say one thing before I say that. There's two
Okay.
things that it's hard to get in a small town, and one of those is a business to come in and plant here, and then one is that business community to unite and work together as a group. The example that was given earlier about if, well, we treat some differently, if the chamber is bent, then maybe we call the chamber. If the chamber has a sign advertising for an event in this town, and it's bent over, I'm not gonna ask a government worker to straighten that sign, but please call me on my cell phone, and I'll go out there and do it, because we're gonna give support to the chamber where we can, and a sign is somewhere we can do it. To address Mr. White, the right-of-way is for public utilities, and that's defined in the state statute. Unfortunately, signs are not defined in state statute. What we can do is allow property owners, I think you may know someone that owns a little bit of property, to allow signs to be put on their property. And I think that's a good thing. And with that, Madam Mayor, I'm going to make a motion that we adopt the suspension. We'll adopt the motion as sent to us by the planning board.
So we have a motion to adopt the planning board recommendation. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion?
I'll just want to say one thing. I have no problem with that. I think the language on this is I don't have a problem with any of the rules if as far as the way it's worded and the flag signs and the ground signs and all that as well too. So I think this is language that if we don't do anything tonight, that we just keep it on the vault and redress this in the future.
Yeah, but this would just, so it was, and Mr. Burmark, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would suspend the rules, but then allow you to still get the changes made outside of 12D, so outside of the temporary signs.
Right.
Yes, outside of 12.7D, they voted to approve those, and then I think they voted for I believe it was a 1-year suspension on enforcement,
So we're going to revisit in a year.
if that's the board's direction.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion to go with the planning board's recommendation. All in favor? All right. 6B is a public hearing and action on a proposed text amendment to Chapter 4 of the UDO as it relates to fences. Ms. Rice?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the board. We have an applicant, Mr. Sykes, on Cypress Street. He submitted an application for a zoning text amendment this January. He requested that Chapter 4.5 of the UDO be amended to allow front yard fences and walls to be built to a maximum of 4 feet in height. The UDO currently allows front yard fences and walls up to 3 feet in height. And so this proposed amendment would bring Mr. Sykes's recently installed fence into compliance. There was another applicant who decided to join on to this request. All other regulations regarding residential fences and walls would remain. Side and rear fences can be installed up to 6 feet in height, and that won't change. The height for front yard fences is typically lower in municipal standards for safety and for aesthetic reasons. Front yard fences are meant to be more decorative rather than to serve a physical and visual barrier. Upon researching fence regulations in surrounding municipalities, staff found that Wendell's front yard fence height standards were actually more strict than most. All municipalities in Wake County have height restrictions for front yard residential fences, but the vast majority allow for a maximum height of 4 feet, and you can see in attachment 1 what the comparison is. I think the only municipality that we looked at that has a lower standard is 3.5 in Wake Forest. Everyone else has 4 feet maximum. So staff actually supports changing section 4.5 of the UDO in accordance with the applicant's request. This change will make Wendell's regulations more consistent with those in the surrounding municipalities. If the proposed amendment is passed, the only exception to the new 4-foot height allowance would be when a fence is located within the site triangle of an intersection in a corner lot. That would still, any portion of a fence or wall within that site triangle would still need to be 3 feet in order to ensure visibility for all motorists. Site triangles are currently addressed in section 9.E3 of the UDO, and to make things a little bit more clear, we're recommending that we add a sentence to chapter 5 directing people wanting to put up fences that they also read chapter 9 to make sure that they comply with that rule. So the proposed changes are fairly small. We're striking out the 3 and adding 4, and adding a sentence at the end of 4.5A1, directing the reader to look at chapter 9. So the planning board recommendation voted, the planning board voted 6-2 in favor of amending section 4.5 of the UDO. And I believe that's it, if anyone has any questions.
You said that this was, this change was submitted because someone had built a fence that wasn't in compliance and they want to bring it in compliance?
Right. Currently, the planning department does not require a building permit or a fence permit or anything like that. Anyone can build a fence in their yard without planning department approval, which is sometimes risky because they sometimes build a fence outside of the regulations, and that's what happened in this case. When that happened, actually the second applicant pointed out the inconsistency, and instead of the planning department asking the fence to be torn down, the applicant submitted a text amendment.
So, since this text amendment is in reference to one or possibly more fences that are out of compliance, is it possible to have pictures of those, since they're the ones that are bringing this about? Did they already exist? Is that possible, or is that even allowed? Can we take that into consideration?
Why does it matter?
The second applicant didn't build the fence.
Well, the first one did, didn't they?
Yeah, the first fence is up.
Yeah.
The first applicant already has a fence in existence. The second applicant wanted to build a fence similar to the first applicant's, and when she was told that she couldn't.
What it looks like is irrelevant. It's just the height. What it
No,
looks.
I think part of the reason it was set at 3 feet originally was for aesthetic purposes. It was so people couldn't wall off their house and things such as that. So I think it is aesthetic. And if we're not going to get into the aesthetic part, I would say that we shouldn't have it at all. It should be the same as a backyard fence, for the sake of consistency.
Well, it's aesthetic and safety. There's also to maintain visibility for law enforcement, for public workers. Visibility at 4 feet, I'm about 5'4", and you can still see over the fence at that point. We did discuss putting in language regarding transparency through the fence. We soon discovered that complicated things very quickly.
Agreed. I agree with that. The state legislature has stripped basically all of our power to regulate aesthetic or, any changes to, single-family residential, as far as actions that we can take. And, I don't have a problem with moving it up to 4 feet. My point was, is that since this text amendment was brought forth by someone who had already built one that was out of compliance, if it was not possible to see the fence, that's all I asked. But, I don't have a problem with allowing 6-foot fences. And the reason is because I don't think it does get too complicated when you start saying, well, if it's wrought iron, you can see through it, or if it's this, or if it's that. And so for the sake of consistency, I don't have a problem with it moving to 4 feet. I was simply asking, since it was brought as a case of a fence that had already been built. That was my only question. But thank you, you answered that, so thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Public hearing is now open. Does anyone wish to speak for or against? Public hearing is now closed.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the planning board recommendation to raise the fence regulation from 3 feet to 4 feet.
All right, so we have a motion to raise the fence height from 3 to 4 feet. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. I'm glad to see we're uncomplicating something a little bit. My goodness. Item 6C is a public hearing and action on ordinance ordering the minimum housing inspector to cause a dwelling at 315 Cook Street to be demolished.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Again, this is for 315 Cook Street. Through general statute, we have authority to enact minimum housing regulations. Part of that involves having a minimum housing inspector, which those responsibilities go to Darrell Hales for the purpose of inspecting buildings, to go when complaints are made or if we get enough petitions from citizens. So in the case of 315 Cook Street, there was actually an inspection by Wake County Animal Control that brought us in, and this started quite some time ago. So the actual inspection by the housing inspector was in January of 2016. We tried to work with the property owner to get these things resolved outside of a minimum housing hearing if possible. Initially there was some responsiveness, but then it died off. So by the time June came around, we decided we had to move forward. So we had a minimum housing hearing in July. At that hearing, it was determined that the dwelling was considered to be dilapidated, meaning that the amount of damage was beyond 40% of its value. And so at that point, they were notified that the dwelling had to be demolished or removed per our minimum housing rules. By the time all the notification requirements through general statute was completed, they actually had until February to demolish it. February 8th, I believe, when that date passed. The next step per the minimum housing regulations would be for us to come before this board and ask for the board's permission or direction to have the minimum housing officer see that the house is demolished, and the town would put a lien on the property to attempt to recover those funds, or the cost of the demolition. There are actually some back taxes on this, so it's uncertain whether or not we'd necessarily be able to recoup all that cost. But what you have before you tonight is that ordinance directing the minimum housing inspector to see that it's demolished, and we would take out bids and just see what the lowest bidder is for that. I have some pictures I could share if there's a desire, but I'll just leave that up to this board. But in general, there's holes in the ceilings, holes in the floors, being held up by cinder blocks, plumbing issues, no HVAC, just a lot of issues for this house. It was very clear in this case. So again, you have that ordinance as an attachment. I'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bergmark?
When's the last time, if ever, that we've taken this action before? To actually demolish?
I'm going to look to the manager because I'm uncertain.
It has been many years ago. We've had a couple of cases over the years, but it's probably been 10 to 15 years since the last case. It's something we use very sparingly, and we try to go all routes that we can to resolve the matter before we go to this point.
Zebulon had one just a few years back. It was a commercial property, though. and it really got drug out for quite a long time, so.
Any other questions? Public hearing is now open. Would anyone, does anyone wish to speak for or against the ordinance, the action on the ordinance to have the house torn down?
Mayor, could you just ask for the record whether anyone is here on behalf of the applicant,
Is anyone here on behalf of the applicant?
or the owner, rather, not the applicant? The owner.
Excuse me?
The owner.
The owner, I'm sorry. All right. Public hearing's now closed. What's y'all's pleasure?
I make a motion that the board consider adopting an ordinance ordering the minimum housing inspector to cause the dwelling at 315 Cook Street to be demolished.
Okay, so is your motion to adopt the ordinance or to consider adopting the ordinance? Am I being nitpicky? But you did say consider. Do you want to, is your motion to adopt the ordinance?
Let us adopt it.
Okay. We have a motion to adopt the ordinance, ordering the housing inspector to cause the dwelling at 315 Cook Street to be demolished. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item 6D is a public hearing for annexation petition A-1701 for 35 acres of town-owned property located on Wendell Falls Parkway and identified by PIN number 17833838891.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Again, you're being asked to hold a public hearing for an annexation request. This is for the Parkview property, the portion that we purchased using multiple grants. It was 36-acre tract. 1 acre of it approximately is already in the corporate limits. We're just looking to annex it in to make our corporate boundaries slightly larger, more contiguous. It also allows us to enforce certain regulations that only apply within our corporate limits, such as firearm regulations and things of that nature. So it's not a tax issue. We're not going to get taxes on it. It's ours. But I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Burkmark? All right. Public hearing's now open. Does anyone wish to speak for or against the annexation of the Parkview property? Public hearing's closed.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the petition for annexation of A-1701 for 35 acres identified as the Parkview property.
So you want to adopt the ordinance?
Yes.
Right, okay. So we have a motion to adopt the ordinance for annexation. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 7 is update by town board committee meeting, town board members of committee meetings, and the technical review committee meeting was canceled, so there is no update there. Now we're going to move right into commissioners' reports, and we'll start with Commissioner Joyner.
Hey, Mayor, just wanted to address 2 of the votes we took earlier tonight with the sign and then the fence. Obviously, those are small technical corrections, in my opinion, that it's kind of funny that we have to come together and vote on sometimes. With that, as we're moving towards the budget, I'd invite folks that attend the meetings, folks that watch from home, folks that live in Wendell, if you're aware of these small things that are currently holding us back. My intention is to go to Eastwick High School, and I think Mr. Hodges will be a good contact for that. There's an initiative across the state right now to have kids in schools come up with policies that we should adopt at the local, state, and federal level. So I want to be spearheading that for Wendell, but I'd also invite the community. If you see something that can be changed that you think would be for the better, contact one of us.
Thank you. Commissioner Boyd.
Deep into my 4th year here, I've learned a few things. There are a couple of things that you know, sort of like spring rain. They come every year without fails. You know, budget talks, you know, there's a retreat, and there's temporary signs that we debate. I'm not sure why we debate them every year. I personally, if we're gonna, you know, suspend them, that when this comes up next year, whether I'm here or not, I would hope that after the third year, we would just say, let us suspend them until further notice, because it just seems to keep dragging back up over and over again. I would like to come up with some sort of non-temporary plan, something that will make everyone happy. Business owners feel like, you know, that their advertising is appreciated, and the town appreciates them, you know, investing in the town. At the same time, respecting what homeowners and property owners think, you know, about the way the town looks when you ride through. And so I think we can come up with something, but I don't know that just revisiting it every year, once a year, is the way to do it. I think we need to have a sit down and really and take stock of the issue with some people that are there. That's all the comments I have for tonight.
Thank you. Commissioner Lutz?
I just would like to say how I enjoyed what the Appearance Commission did with the masquerade party. I thought they did a great job with decorating the gym. It was a well time. I hope they raised some money for the beautification of Wendell, but I think a good time was had by everybody, and it looked fantastic. So.
Commissioner Carroll?
I'd just like to echo Mayor Pro Tem Lutz's comments. If you missed the Party with a Purpose, I would highly recommend going next year. Great event for a great cause, so definitely check it out next year.
Thank you. Well, I also wanted to mention the Appearance Commission party. We all were there, had a wonderful time. It's my understanding they earned over $5,000, so they raised over $5,000 for town beautification projects. So I look forward to seeing what they do around town. I'm sure it'll be great. I want to thank them for their hard work, and I want to thank Patrick Reedy, who's their town staff liaison. He really works very hard, and he's very patient, and to be a gentleman in a room full of women planning things. I also want to tell you about Carver Elementary School. Their fifth graders just returned from their annual field trip. The fifth grade goes every year to Washington, D.C. And this year, on their trip, they laid a wreath that's had Carver Elementary School on the ribbon on the tomb of the unknown soldier. And there's a little video I saw of the children there, and they walked out and carried it. And I was just so pleased and proud to see them for so many reasons there. Certainly honoring our veterans, but to see those children learning that, and they were being so respectful and kind, and I was very proud to see our school name on there. So I want to thank them for doing that and being such good ambassadors of Wendell. I want to remind you that the Pro Town BMX show will be Saturday, March 25th on Main Street at 11 and 1:30, and there's instructional opportunities for your kids. You can bring their bikes and helmets. If you don't have them, they'll have them for you, and you can learn a lot. The children love it every year. It's a lot of fun. There will be the two different shows that they do, and there'll be food trucks and whatnot, so it should be a fun day. I urge you to come down to Main Street and visit with us. The next thing I want to tell you is that Dr. Gene Hester, who wrote the book My Friend Hootie, I know some of you are probably familiar with him. Hootie's an owl that lives in an undisclosed location here near Wendell. And Dr. Hester can get the owl to come to him, and he feeds him. And in fact, he's going to take me to see him one day soon. We've been talking about it. But he was interviewed by Scott Mason of the Tar Heel Traveler, and it's going to be on TV tomorrow night on WRAL at 5:55 p.m. So I urge you to watch it. Dr. Hester is a beloved resident of Wendell, and he does a lot of wonderful things for us, and I hope that you'll tune in and watch him. It's also going to be on WRAL.com later that night, and maybe we can link it to some of our town stuff as well, so that you can watch it, and we can try to share it on Facebook and have it linked to the town website as well. The last thing I want to do is remind you that we are currently accepting citizen board applications through April 4th. You can go online and print off the form and mail it in. You can submit it directly online. It just depends on your computer capabilities and whatnot at home, but I urge you to apply. We have a big fun time. You can be on the appearance committee, and they have great parties. We have the Parks and Rec. The tree board, we're getting ready to have all the Arbor Day celebrations in the next couple of weeks, and that's their most active time of year. The planning board, the Board of Adjustment. I don't think I left any out. But they all have important roles that they play, and I really hope that I can encourage some of you to apply. We do have some spaces that are open. This year, for the first year since I can remember in a long, long time, every single board was full, which is a great accomplishment, I think, because we've always had some lingering empty spots. So it just goes to show you that this is your opportunity to be part of something fun that's happening around town and be influential in things around town. So I urge you to apply. That's all I've got. I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Thank you. We're adjourned.